welcome back to the vlog. Today we are starting a Faith Fridays little new series where I take you guys to church with me and share what my pastor goes over at church. Today I am serving on production, so it's like 7:20 now. We're headed to church and I'm driving, which if my husband's not working is not normal, but we woke up very late today, so I didn't even get a chance to do my hair, but don't you worry. I brought my wet brush and my hair product or whatever, so I'm gonna do that after sound check. And yeah, basically the agreement is if we're running late, I drive, because if you're like me and you have a lot of things to say when your husband is driving, then maybe just don't let him drive when you are in a rush and you really have to be somewhere. That is what I practice. I think that works 80% of the time. And I don't know, babe, do you think that has been helpful? So I feel like when we're in a rush, I really don't like how you drive my car, and that really stresses me out.
I think it has been helpful.
It has been helpful.
Yeah.
Final verdict. If this is something you struggle with, try it out. I don't know. Look at her. Anyway. So yeah, we're headed to church now. We're running just a smidge late. I think we'll be there a few minutes late. But yeah, I mean, all things being considered, we have 20 minutes to get ready.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I think we did great.
Well, yeah, you can do that too.
Okay, anyway, that's my husband's attempt at covering up the fact that my car still looks disgusting, which I've talked about several times, but we still have some renovations to do at one of our rental properties, so bear with me. This is our backdrop.
It looks much better.
Very COVID friendly of us, don't you think?
It's blocking all the tools.
It's taking me back to 2020.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're going to talk about our church notes. So typically when we come home from church and we're in the car, I'll read through my notes, or my husband will read through his notes, and we'll talk about the sermon. So I figured for this vlog today that we would just do that together with you guys. Anyway, so do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
You can start, and I guess I'll just kind of jump in.
Okay.
I have something.
Yeah, so I did share my notes on Instagram. I'm gonna put them here. Sorry, hon, your face is just in where I put things. Anyway, so I put those on my Instagram, so if you guys are interested in checking that out, that will be over there. But it starts with just a little context. So for right now in church, we're going through the 7 letters that are in Revelations.
Yep.
And we were talking about this at dinner, but the churches that we went over today were Thyatira, probably butchering that, and Sardis.
Yep.
Anyway, so as far as keeping with the context, basically in Revelation there are these letters, and they're talking to different churches that are struggling with different categories being persecuted, being lukewarm, compromising their faith, falling into being legalistic, and just enduring during the end times, and just remaining faithful and loving throughout the end times. So that's kind of what the letters are encouraging you. But for the first one, Thyatira, in Revelations 2:18-19, so it says in verse 18, it says, "Write this letter to the angel of the church of Thyatira. This is the message from the Son of God, whose eyes are like flames of fire, whose feet are like polished bronze. So just like pausing there, he did mention in the last couple of weeks we've been talking about how all of these letters start with a description of God. So to Ephesus, it said the one who holds the 7 stars. To Smyrna, it says the one who is the first and the last, the Alpha and the Omega, who is dead but now alive. And then to Pergamum, it says the one with the sharp 2-edged sword. So this is the first and only one that mentions God as the Son of God. So this is that first divine introduction. So then continuing in verse 19, it says, I know all the things you do. I have seen your hard work and your patient endurance. I know you don't tolerate evil people. You have examined the claims of those who say they are apostles but are not. You have discovered they are liars. You have patiently suffered for me without quitting. So in this, the pastor was basically just talking about how Jesus sees everything that we do, the bad as well as the good things. So when we kind of like question ourselves and we're like, oh, like what's the point? It's like, well, the point is like Jesus does see all of these things, because that's who's speaking in here. That's all I had for that. And then it moves on to 20 and 22. Did you have anything else for that?
Yeah, I mean, 18, basically the same thing you did. And I mean, the only thing that he kind of brought up across most of the letters was basically like how at this point in the letter, like, you know, the churches are probably sitting back and they're like smiling and like their arms are crossed, thinking like, yeah, man, I'm killing it. I'm doing such a great job. And then verse 20, which we're going to get into in a second, is like, here comes the rebuke. And like, just kind of picture yourself, like you're standing in front of this crowd of people, your church, and you're kind of saying, like, you're reading this letter from the apostle and just saying like how great everybody's doing this. Oh, and like verse 20 is, here's rebuke of the perversion of Jezebel.
Yeah, it's like, but I have this complaint against you. You're permitting this woman who calls herself Jezebel to lead my servants astray. She teaches them to commit sexual sin and to eat foods offered to idols. I gave her time to repent, but she doesn't want to turn away from her immorality. Therefore, I will throw her on a bed of suffering, and those who commit adultery with her will suffer greatly unless they repent and turn away from their evil deeds. I will strike her children dead. Then all the churches will know that I'm the one who searches out the thoughts and intentions of every person, and I will give to each of you whatever you deserve.
But the one thing that I took away from that was like when civilization as a whole, we tolerate the spirit of Jezebel in just civilization, it falls apart.
Yeah, that's kind of what he was saying, is that in our time, like, not to fall prey of the worldly view of sexuality, because it might be common, but common doesn't equate to like normal or natural or the way that things are supposed to be, essentially.
Yeah, and all I had for that was, you know, the word of God holds within it the morality for civilization to exist.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I mean, like, I feel like that was enough said.
Yeah. All right, so the only other thing I had, or that he had mentioned on that, is just the mentality that people carry when they're like, oh, well, what's the big deal? Who cares? It's not that big a deal. Or like when people are like, when someone in your life is doing something they shouldn't be doing, whether that's being complacent in their faith or struggling with, you know, homosexuality or whatever the case is, and you're like, oh, well, I don't want to say anything, you know, it's really not that big a deal, like, what does it matter? And to his point, it was like, or I mean, really to the Bible's point, is like, you can't take the fundamentals of our faith like out without everything else leading to destruction. And it, like, he then furthered that by saying, like, you know, we complain about the destruction in the world around us and with us, while at the same time we're constantly behaving in destructive ways. So it's almost like what happened in like the garden, where it's like, you know, we're turning away from God and then we're upset because we're not being able to like live in like the promises of like what God said. And even in marriage, it's like, well, when you're not in your word and you're not like talking kindly to each other and you're not like being loving with one another, but then you're upset that like your marriage isn't, like, your marriage is on the rocks. And it's like, well,
yeah,
you're acting destructive. So that's like kind of like goes hand in hand. And like at that, he said like, no, like in that mindset, like in the same mindset, it's like, do we think that we love one another more than God loves us? And It's like God made these rules for us because he loves us. And so for us to say, well, I don't want to say anything, I don't want to remind them that like this is what they have to do, you know, because I want them to like feel good or whatever. It's like, well, do you think that God doesn't love them? Like that God doesn't want them to like be happy? And like it's like he said this so that you could be good.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I have for that was like we complain about the world that we live in, but
Yeah.
we still perpetuate the behavior that was displayed in the garden, which
Yeah.
is similar to exactly what you were saying.
Yeah.
And I mean, that just to me really hit home, because like even like at the firehouse, they were complaining about like just the world that we live in America, just specifically just people complaining about like, you know, how like the one lady who's running fire commercials basically said like, you know, this country's going to hell in a handbasket, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but like on the other hand, like we're talking about abortion, and like she's basically perpetuating and basically saying like, yeah, but I feel like it should be like, you know, the woman's choice. And like, you know, you're on one hand you're complaining about literally how the world's going to hell in a handbasket, and on the other hand you're permitting and perpetuating like, hey, like I want to be my own God. I want to choose for me and be my, like, just lead myself.
Yeah.
So that's all I had for that.
Well, then moving on to the second church, which is Sardis. That's Revelations chapter 3, verses 1 through 3. All right, so this one says, "Write this letter to the angel of the church in Sardis. This is the message from the one who has the sevenfold Spirit of God and the 7 stars. I know all the things you do, and that you have a reputation for being alive, but you are dead. Wake up." So just like going right from there, you talked about in context, like this is a city who was well known for, you know, thriving, and the church had like this reputation of, you know, bringing people to Christ and doing all these great things. And it's like, you know, you were once alive, but basically now you're dead.
Yeah. I just had a couple more notes from like the previous thing. One was about tolerance.
Oh yeah, he did talk about that.
Yeah, so like, you know, the one thing that like really stood out in like the previous chapter 2 was like how tolerance is constantly always being redefined.
Yeah.
And then it, like how tolerance used to be is like, you know, hey, you have an opinion, maybe you have a different opinion, and I don't appreciate your opinion, but we can still live together, and like, you know, like we can sustain a relationship based off of like, hey, like I won't pick on you, you don't pick on me, and like that we'll tolerate each other.
Yeah.
Now tolerance is now changed into, if you have a conviction that's against mine, then you have to change your conviction to match mine, and if you don't, then you're not tolerant.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just how like that is a perversion of how God designed this. And then additionally, he led on to how guilt is like a non-starter. Like it won't sustain. Like if your motivation behind change and behind anything is guilt-driven, like it's only a matter of time until like I see it across like just even my own life, like how I just rationalize things away, like and how like multiple people just rationalize sin away. Like if you're just doing it out of guilty conscience, like you're trying to like, hey, like I'm doing this for God, I'm tithing for God, like I'm tithing because God asked me to do it, like, you know, or like I'm serving in the church like because Pastor Jesse asked me to, and you're just doing it out of this guilty conscience. Like eventually you're just be like, I don't have to do this, like I don't want to do this anymore, and like you'll just stop doing it.
Like if your why isn't great enough.
Exactly, your why.
Yeah.
Let's see. Sorry, I think I jumped. Yeah, and then the last point for chapter 2 was your good intentions doesn't lead people to a better tomorrow. So like, you know, my intention might be like, oh well, hey, I don't want to hurt their feelings by like rebuking them. I don't want to like, you know, say anything that might, you know, harm them or temporarily cause them pain.
Yeah.
But out of good intentions. But what's the old saying? It's like,
The path to hell is carved
yes,
with good intentions.
yeah, the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
Like same concept as that.
Yeah.
And then chapter 3 is what we're getting into, which was the church was alive and now it's dead, and because they're no longer fed and sustained off the word of God.
Yeah.
So talking about like, you know, how the church was alive, no longer dead, is dead because it's no longer fed off and sustained off the word of God. And then, you know, he led into the next note I had was the church should be like a fine wine. Like as we've gotten older in age after age, like we should just get better and better with time. More people being saved, more people being converted, more people spreading the word, more people sowing into the church, more people tithing just across the board. Like, and we don't.
Well, yeah. I mean, this was like one of the other points was just about how like a lot of Christians will like rest in, well, I used to do this, and like before we did this, and we grew the church to this number or that, and like we had these past accomplishments or these past victories, and it's like, okay, well then we're gonna like live on that. Like, okay, we're just gonna hang our banner on this is what we did, and like we're not gonna go any further than that. And basically he said like growing in a sense of apathy, like kind of to that point, like is when he was saying, we should constantly be getting better, growing, learning, teaching, seeking, expanding. And some Christians will get apathetic and just be like, oh, well, I used to go on trips, and I used to do this, and I used to be involved, and I know like me and God are good because like we used to do this. And it's like, well, no, you have to like live in a continual perpetual state. And like the wake up is like kind of that reality check of like you go to bed, you like wake up every morning, and it's something that you're doing constantly. Like I might accomplish so much today, but when I go to bed, I still have to wake up and like do something else tomorrow. Like it's not like, oh well, I just accomplished, like I'm a Christian, and then I can just like go to bed and just like rest in that, and like now I got my golden ticket or something like that. Like you actually have to like be responsible for your own spiritual growth.
Right.
And I really like the quote that he shared where it was talking about like something along the lines of next to cowardice and treachery, overconfidence leading to neglect, so basically just living life on autopilot, and slothfulness, so overconfidence leading to neglect and slothfulness or laziness is the worst wartime crime. And it's kind of like we're at war. The Bible tells us like we are at a war. It's not a war against flesh and blood, but like the enemy is like out to get us against our marriage. So even just like looking at it in that context is like next to cowardice and treachery, or like next to not standing up for your wife, or like cheating, overconfidence leading to neglect or going on autopilot, and slothfulness, like being lazy, not being in your word, like not doing these disciplines we should be doing every day, is the worst wartime crime. Like that is what leads to the disintegration of basically everything. You could just like fill in the blank.
3 minutes.
Yeah, so after that I just have like some like applications. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
I mean, kind of like what you're saying, like the enemy knows us best, and the Bible defines them, the devil, as the enemy. It wanders around like a roaring lion, waiting and seeking to destroy.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, in this last letter, what really stood out to me in chapter 3 was really, I think it was more like a warning to like older Christians, like in the Christians who find themselves comfortable in their faith.
Yeah.
Who think like, all right, cool, like maybe you were saved when you were like 20 years old, or like maybe 18, or like you were raised in the church, and you're like, all right, cool, like that part of my Christian journey is behind me. Like I no longer go to church every single Sunday. I no longer sow into God's house. I no longer read my Bible because, hey, like I'm really comfortable where I'm at, because I used to do those things back when I was 18, back when I was 20, up in my 30s. Maybe you did it for 20 years and you're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like I served my journey. And so it's like, no, you cannot get comfortable in your faith. You cannot get comfortable in your journey. Like literally, I believe it's in Revelation chapter 3 where he says like, do this so I don't blot out your name in the book of life.
Yeah, actually.
Like, in order for him to blot out your name has to be written in the book of life.
Yeah, I'll read that. Or actually, I'm going to read this one first. This is 1 Corinthians 10:12, and it is along the lines of that, and then I'll go to Revelations. It says, if you think you're standing strong, be careful not to fall. So that's kind of like along the lines of what we're talking about, like just another encouragement. And then going back to Revelations, which it's probably better if we just end in Revelation since that's actually what we're reading. It does say, go back to what you had heard and believed at first. Hold to it firmly. Repent and turn to me again. If you don't wake up, I will come to you suddenly as an unexpected thief. Yet there are some in the church of Sardis who have not sullied their clothes with evil. They walk with me in the white, for they are worthy. All who are victorious will be clothed in white. I will never erase their names from the book of life, but I will announce before my Father and his angels that they are mine. Anyone who has ears to hear must listen to the Spirit and understand what he is saying to the churches.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, and the last thing I had was like, and it's obvious, like, when he said, Pastor just saying you, like, he's talking just in general, like, people don't understand the consequences on the other side. Like, because if you truly understood the consequences to this life and to your sin nature, you would run to God.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't sit there and be like, I'm good. Like, I'm going to leave myself. Like, I'm my own God. Like, I want to make my own choices.
Well, I love that analogy that he used. I think it wasn't this Sunday, but he said, like, the whole thing about, like, who do you fear and, like, who do you run to? And he said his children often, when they're afraid of their other siblings, they will run behind him as their father. And so he was kind of saying, like, that's the type of fear that we should have with God. Like, the fear of a father, where it's like, when I'm afraid, this is who I run behind. This is who I get behind. Like, this is who I'm following. And it's like, I thought that was a really great analogy for
absolutely. 'Cause God is, like, our father, so, like, we should run behind him and, like, be like that little kid who, like, runs, like, in his analogy, like, runs and hide behind his leg and, like, kind of sticks his head down, like, at his brother or sister, just kind of like, you can't touch me.
It was minus the taunting part.
Yeah. Like, the last one I had was lying to others doesn't help them. We have to take responsibility for our own spiritual growth.
Oh yeah, that was from before.
Yeah, so that's literally the last thing, the last thing that I didn't read. Just basically to me, like, just don't allow people to be comfortable. Like, if you have the opportunity to speak into somebody's life, like, you have to. Yeah. It's our obligation, and, like, that's the thing. Like, and he didn't say it this Sunday, but he said it in the past, which is like, we've given up our right to an opinion. Just because you're welcome at our church doesn't mean we're morally obliged to bow to what you want.
Yeah.
Like, if you're coming in there
with, like, tolerance.
Yeah. Basically, if you're coming in and, like, you say, like, hey, like, I identify as whatever, like, we're called to speak truth into that situation, into your life. So you're always welcome in our church.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, as far as, like, applications, just for the end of my notes, I put 3 different things. Number 1, to be alert of what we do, and also to just be alert of what we do well, but also of common pitfalls and, like, what's natural and, like, what's going on in culture, just so that we could be like, caution ourselves and prepare ourselves and ready ourselves to, like, not fall into that. But then also the second thing was to maintain a posture of grace and truth, which is along the lines of what you're saying, like, everyone is welcome, but we are going to speak truth into situations. So having that, like, balance, like Jesus, of, speaking truth into situations and to the people in our lives and the people around us, but also being graceful and loving and compassionate. And then the last thing was to remember that we're all sinners, which doesn't necessarily mean we tolerate sin, or remember that we're all sinners, but we don't tolerate sin or, like, become complacent or apathetic in our walk, or, like, actual tangible things that we can apply to our life. Is like, okay, well, how do I walk in grace and truth? Well, I can walk in grace knowing I'm a sinner as well, but we don't tolerate sin, and I'm not complacent or apathetic in my own life, and I can speak truth into what I'm doing and my shortcomings and my failures, and ask people, my friends and whatnot, to, like, hold me accountable, and also to have that same accountability going both ways.
So one of the last things I had was, and just something to remember, is, like, God doesn't come to condemn us as Christians. Like, we're already condemned.
Yeah.
Like, because of our sin, because just the nature of the world, like, we're condemned to hell because of our actions, and God comes to save us.
Yeah.
And, like, so at no point, just as something to remember, like, especially, like, when we're speaking truth into people's life, like, obviously, like you just said, like, we're supposed to do it with grace. But just remember, like, we're all broken, we're all fallen, we're all condemned to hell, with the exception of, if we're saved by Jesus.
Yeah.
That's all I had. You got any other applications?
No, those are mine.
Nice.
All right. Well, if you guys like this video, if you like this video style, make sure to drop down below and smash that like button and subscribe to my page for more videos like this. Make sure your post notifications are on because I do post 2 videos a week, one on Thursdays and one today on Faith Fridays. But until then, be blessed, and I'll see you guys next time.